At the end of the last Xtrada video, I told you I'd be upgrading this bike. Well, that transformation is now complete, and I think it looks extraordinary. That's funny. Let's go on a tour of this bike and I'll show you what I've done. I've pretty much only ever ridden RockShox suspension, so when I decided I did want to upgrade the fork on this bike, I wanted to try something different, and I also wanted to keep it around $500 or less. My top two choices for the fork were the Marzocchi Bomber Z2 and what I ultimately went with, this Manitou Machete. I don't know how you want to pronounce it. My decision came down to price because I found this fork on sale for $398, whereas the Marzocchi Bomber Z2 retails for $520. You don't see Manitou forks all that often, and I've personally never ridden on one. And I also really like the reverse arch thing they have. No, the fork was not installed backwards. That is just how Manitous are designed. I went with 120 millimeters of travel because that is how the bike comes spec'd, and I didn't really want to change it. I thought that was an appropriate amount of travel for this bike. You don't need 180 millimeters of travel on this bike. You know people do it. I think it's a really sleek looking fork. It comes with its own mud guard, and it even comes with black Manitou decals if these silver decals aren't your thing. I've done a couple rides on this fork and I found getting it dialed in was a little bit finicky. I thought I got it all dialed in at home. I went out to ride, it felt way too firm, like there was too much air pressure in there. I forgot my shock pump on that first ride. That was stupid, that's on me. So I found a little twig to push the air valve. Apparently I let too much air out because then it felt incredibly awful and spongy. When I got home from that first ride, I spent a little more time dialing it in. So I went out and rode it this morning, and I think I finally got the fork where I want it. And I gotta say, this thing feels really good. It's incredibly supple and smooth for small to medium bumps. It felt really, really good just pedaling around. When I took off the original fork, I noticed that the headset was the loose ball bearing type. Putting a nice new fork on with a cheap headset didn't seem right, so I figured I might as well upgrade that while I'm at it. I ended up going with this Wolf Tooth Performance headset, mostly for the color. It is almost a near identical match to the purple at the head tube, so it looks pretty damn cool. I'm a sucker for color coordination and I wanted to do this bike justice, so expensive purple headset. With the new fork having a boost through axle, I did have to upgrade at least the front wheel, but I got a little creative and decided to just share the wheel set off of my Trek Top Fuel. I can't ride both bikes at the same time anyways, and luckily these tan wall tires look incredible on this bike. Look at it one more time. These are the Hunt XC wide wheels with a 25 millimeter internal width, and I actually do have rim packed tire inserts in both the front and the back. I think they're about 1,600 grams for the wheel set, which is pretty impressive for aluminum. I've had these for about a year. I didn't buy these for either of these bikes, so it just kind of worked out that I had a lightweight wheel set. The disc rotors that came on the Xtrada were 160 millimeters front and rear, so I did have to buy two brake adapters to fit the 180 millimeter rotors from this wheel set. These are the XT Ice Tech rotors, and since these are much nicer, you know I've already upgraded to metal pads. I feel like I mention metallic pads in every video. I'm just a big fan of them, okay? Since Shimano parts are kind of difficult to get a hold of right now, I decided to try out Miles racing pads. The brake pads are actually teal and they pretty much perfectly match the teal that's on the bike. So that's a really cool little attention to detail that even I didn't plan. But now that you look at it, you're like, that looks really good, right? Another bonus to this wheel set, it does have an SLX cassette, whereas the original came with a Dior. So we're saving, I don't know, like 20 grams there. XC life. In all my upgrades, one thing I noticed was the chain was a KMC. It worked and shifted fine, but I ended up getting a Shimano chain in hopes that it doesn't wear my cassette out as fast, and it just so happens it shifts a little bit smoother now. Moving up to the cockpit, I had these Bontrager handlebars lying around from my Trek Top Fuel. There was nothing wrong with the stem and bar that came on this bike. I did just want a little bit higher rise out of the handlebar. The original stem was a 31.8 millimeter clamp. These bars are a 35mm clamp, so I did end up having to buy a new stem. I went with the Salsa Guide trail stem in a 40mm length. That's the same length as the stock stem, and it was fairly affordable. Some of you eagle-eyed viewers may notice an extra lever, and that's for my P&W Rainier dropper post with 125mm of travel. Yes, I went with a teal paddle. If you couldn't tell by now, I've paid quite a bit of attention to the color scheme of this bike. Notice the matching purple wolf tooth seat post clamp? I bet you did, you sly devil. A couple small final touches are these white bottle cages and my homemade mastic tape down tube protector. Yes, it looks awful. No, you don't have to tell me. Thankfully, you can't really see it when the bike is sitting right side up. I hope I don't crash on this bike because 1, I'll be embarrassed that I crashed, and 2, people will see my down tube protector and I'll be even more ashamed. Okay, I think that covers all of the upgrades, so let's talk about weight. Out of the box, this thing weighed 32.44 pounds, and now it weighs 28.72 pounds. That's a total savings of 3.72 pounds, which is pretty significant. Out on the trail, these upgrades took a very good platform and made it even better. As I mentioned in the last video, the stock fork was pretty harsh on repeated small bumps, so this Manitou fork is a welcomed upgrade. The next best upgrade I would say is the dropper post. It totally makes this bike more rideable. There's actually not a ton of posts sticking out, but it would be nice if I could get a longer post if I wanted to. For most of the downhill riding I did today, this was plenty of drop, but it did hit me in the rear end a couple times when trying to jump it. This bike isn't really designed for that kind of riding, so maybe the shorter seat post will keep me in check. Even with the larger rotors and the metal pads, these brakes are still fairly underpowered, but I never had an instance where I wasn't able to stop. Like I said in the last video, you just gotta brake a little sooner than you would with a nicer set. This bike was quite impressive in its stock form, but these upgrades just give me more to love. And finally, my least favorite part of this video, let's go ahead and break down the cost of this. I already wrote all this down, it hurts. The Manitou machete fork, $398. The wolf tooth headset, $80. The salsa stem, $45. 2 brake adapters, $15. The P&W dropper with the loam lever, $215. I found a 20% coupon code, so saved me some money there. The wolf tooth seat post clamp, $25. It's expensive to match your colors. The 2 water bottle cages, $50. I can't believe a bottle cage is $25. They work really well, they are a little expensive. The roll of mastic tape, $10. The metallic brake pads, $50. The deity grips, I believe, were $20. The shop labor to install the headset and fork was $60. And finally, the new chain, I think, was $30. Adding that up brings my total to $998, which makes me absolutely sick. And it reminds me why I rarely upgrade bikes. All right. It doesn't seem that expensive when you're buying like one thing at a time and you're not really paying attention. That total doesn't even include the wheels and tires because I already had those. But if we did include all that, we'd be looking at close to $1,800 in upgrades on a bike that costs $1,100. This would be a $2,900 bike. That is absurd. You can get a much nicer bike for that price. If this is your first video you're seeing, Bikes Online sent it to me for free. I'm very grateful for that. If I'd bought this bike for full retail, there's absolutely no way I would put that much money into this bike. And with that terrible news, make sure you subscribe, give this video a thumbs up, and drop a comment down below. I make about a penny on each view, so make sure you share it with your friends and help me recoup some of that money. Thank you again to Bikes Online for sending me this bike. I'm eternally grateful. I really love this thing. Thank you so much for watching, and until the next one, stay rowdy within reason.